Top 15 WWE superstars that recently hated on another wrestler.
If you are brand new to our channel, we invite you to take a moment to subscribe. Just click on the lit red button as well as the gray bell. Why the bell? Well, it will let you know every time we post a new video.
15.
Chris Jericho and Tetsuya Naito. It seems like not everyone in the wrestling business is totally sold on the once-in-a-lifetime matchup featuring Jericho and Omega. Naito had some choice words when talking about Wrestle Kingdom. He made the claim that the show will feature co-main events. Another bout that shouldn't be taken lightly features our championship match between Naito and Okada. You have to understand where Naito was coming from, but Jericho was having none of it, ripping Naito. According to Jericho, he had no idea who Naito even was, which is a bit of slap in the face to the Japanese culture. Chris remained adamant that the show will be headlined by one match featuring himself and Kenny. Whether this was a shoot or not is unknown, but rumors also indicate that Jericho might be setting up another future match with Naito down the line. For now, however, it seems to be viewed as a shoot.
14.
Becky Lynch and Liv Morgan. You have to love Becky Lynch. Despite the fact she's out shooting a movie with WWE films, she still keeps in touch with the product. Lynch poked fun at the new SmackDown faction, the Riot Squad, for their lackluster performance at Clash of Champions. In the tweet, Lynch was specifically taking a shot at Liv Morgan for her total fail in hitting her own partner while the teams battled outside. Morgan did the wrong thing here by answering back, truly a rookie mistake. She responded by tweeting out that she cringes every time Lynch yelled straight fire. Again, Becky had the easy comeback to ripping Morgan, claiming she feels the same way when watching her wrestle. Yikes. Classic case of a veteran putting a youngster in their place. Thankfully, the verbal jousting ended there.
13.
Corey Graves and Vince Russo. We'll make an exception here as both aren't wrestlers. Nowadays, Graves is arguably the top commentator in all of the WWE, while Vince Russo continues to cover the WWE product far away from his residence. He's also been quite harsh via Twitter, and in one instance he decided to take a shot at Corey Graves most recently. Russo took the first shot bashing the commentators for not selling the Jason Jordan-Braun Strowman match. He ended the tweet telling Graves that Pee Wee wanted his suit back. Well, Corey wasn't about to let things slide. In his comeback, Graves indicated how sad it was that the driving force, yes, he put it in quotations as well, of the Attitude Era uses similar insults than his own 9-year-old. Graves ended the tweet telling Russo to credit him for getting extra views on his podcast. Winner by unanimous decision, Corey Graves. 12. Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar. This one flew under the radar, but Roman Reigns was brutally honest when discussing his match against Brock Lesnar. Reigns didn't have the greatest experience in dealing with the Beast ahead of their WrestleMania 31 clash. Roman called the process extremely weird and way too last minute. Reigns was also pinpointing the fact that both Heyman and Lesnar really weren't open to many ideas. Instead, they simply wanted to obliterate Roman during the match, because according to them, that's what the people wanted to see. Despite the bizarre pre-match encounters, Roman was grateful for how the match played out. You know you did well when Bret Hart tells you it was an instant classic. For what it's worth, fellow Shield member Dean Ambrose also discussed his terrible experience in dealing with Brock the following year.
11.
Liv Morgan and Enzo Amore. Let's give the 23-year-old some props here. She's not afraid to make waves outside of the ring, as controversy sells, and it can only help her career. She might have recently gotten destroyed via Twitter by Becky Lynch, but the same could not be said for her tweet this past September. Morgan had the wrestling community buzzing when she tweeted out, "Me knowing that I'm single, and nobody cheating on me." The message was followed by a gif of Morgan smiling and sipping on some water. Of course, her tweet was in regards to her relationship with Enzo Amore. The two were an item for quite some time, though they finally split due to Enzo being unfaithful. Morgan continued via social media, even putting a picture with Tyler Bates suggesting that the two were
10.
10. Finn Balor and Baron Corbin. One of the lesser-known Twitter wars featured a likely candidate taking on an unlikely opponent. Corbin hasn't shied away from backstage antics, clashing with fans, and even personnel backstage. The opposite is true when it comes to Finn Balor, as he's regarded as one of the most popular faces behind the scenes due to his infectious and positive attitude. Of course, it wasn't too shocking that the battle was launched by Baron Corbin. After Finn tweeted out that he forgets to do crunches, Corbin responded by saying his abs had no choice but to stick out due to the fact that he weighs 162 pounds. Baylor ended the war instantly with one incredible tweet asking Corbin for the few extra pounds hiding under his t-shirt. Judging by the tweets, you can definitely see some past animosity between the two. To Corbin's credit, he's done a great job in keeping kayfabe alive out of the ring.
9.
9. Nia Jax in the women's locker room. Nia Jax recently made headlines for an Instagram post completely unrelated to her character inside of the ring. Instead, she broke kayfabe, making the claim that not only is she body-shamed online on a regular basis, but the issue is also taking place in her own backyard. According to Jax, she's been body-shamed by her own co-workers while getting changed in the women's locker room. The claims were certainly alarming, especially given the sensitivity of the WWE product nowadays working under a PG environment. To Nia's credit, her post was seen as a source of inspiration for many that struggle with the same type of problem. It seems as though the WWE dealt with this situation by turning Jax into a sex symbol. She's currently working a romance storyline alongside Enzo Amore. 8. Ryback and Rusev. In truth, we could have done an entire article on Ryback taking shots at current WWE superstars. Others we won't mention in this article include Seth Rollins, Triple H and Vince McMahon, who were all targets of Ryback following his release. Oh, and he even took a shot at the entire women's division. You can't make this stuff up. Recently, he was at it again, but this time around, Ryback was dishing it out via Instagram. Following a post by the Usos showing Rusev curling, Ryback responded by taking a shot at the lightweight, being pushed by the Bulgarian brute. The witty WWE superstar won the battle in one tweet by responding, "All natural workouts here." Yikes. Unfortunately for Ryback, this isn't the last instance of a wrestler taking a shot at him in the article. We'll have another example a little later.
7.
7. Roman Reigns and Enzo Amore. Roman Reigns told CM Punk back in the day that he'd become the next locker room leader behind the scenes. Well, it seems as though the guy wasn't wrong, as he's turning into one of the most respected faces behind the curtain. Reigns took his power a step further by recently standing up for all of the boys during a tour overseas. While traveling on a bus, Enzo was said to be talking way too loud on his phone, along with talking about obnoxious topics such as how much money he was making due to merchandise sales. Roman took the initiative as the leader to kick Enzo off the bus for his behavior. His peers were said to be ecstatic by the decision, as Amore wasn't, and still isn't, the most liked backstage among his peers. Roman was very open about the ordeal, discussing it in detail during the Chris Jericho podcast. He also kicked Enzo out of the men's locker room.
6.
6. Lana and Dana Brooke. This heat took place due to the apparent stealing of a finishing move. Total Divas initiated the fuel by making the claim that Dana had stolen Lana's finishing move, which is just laughable on so many levels. Brooke took exception to the tweet making the claim that Total Divas and Lana played me dirty with the accusation. Brooke went on the defense stating she'd been using the maneuver for years down in NXT and proof of that was available for those that had followed her career. Wisely, Lana chose to stay out of this one. She's been caught in Twitter wars in the past, and in her last exchange, she got the worst side of the battle against Paige, who isn't afraid to speak her mind. Nowadays, Lana is letting her frustrations out on the fans online instead.
5.
5. Randy Orton and Bubba Dudley. A dive-related tweet started this war. Bubba tweeted about a dive which Orton took exception to, thinking it was a shot at him. Before you knew it, things blew up and wrestling outlets were salivating over the dispute. Bubba opened up about the issue, discussing past beef between the two, which went back 10 years ago. According to Bubba, things soured between the two after a tough match that featured the Dudleys against Batista and Orton. Following the bout, both Randy and Dave required medical attention for injuries from the match. The two sides had choice words for one another, and the heat never subsided till Bubba's return, when the two finally put the dispute on the back burner. However, the Twitter war just added new fuel to the fire. At the end of the day, it was a misunderstanding by both sides that turned into a pretty lengthy debate.
4.
4. Lio Rush in the WWE and NXT locker rooms. Signing a WWE superstar in their early 20s is always a risk, especially when they're projected to be major stars due to their past work. Well, it seems as though Rush was a little too confident when tweeting out a distasteful statement, claiming things are truly bad when you're not ready for Asuka. The tweet was terribly insensitive as a WWE superstar, Emma, had just lost her job. Poking fun at someone for getting released is never a good idea. The comments caused a storm online with the likes of Kevin Owens, Samoa Joe, Peyton Royce, Dash Wilder, Buddy Murphy, Jack Gallagher and heck even X-Pac, just to name a few, all taking shots at Rush for his comments. Luckily for him, he was not released by the WWE, and he's now laying on the down low, even disabling the comments section via his Instagram account, because of all the hate.
3.
3. Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes. Give Roman some credit here. He's got a big pair of you-know-what, never afraid to challenge anyone online. Heck, he even got into it with John Cena in numerous exchanges. Another one of his targets was Cody Rhodes after the former WWE superstar regarded himself as the biggest draw in wrestling following his release from the WWE and rise as an indie star. After a fan asked Roman for his thoughts on the matter, Reigns reacted by tweeting out, "I don't even need to click," and the link and watch his video. If that house didn't draw over 100K, he's just talking silly. Roman ended the tweet by writing, "Walkover talk." Reigns ended the jousting, claiming he's alone on top of the mountain with nobody in sight. It's hard to argue with that fact nowadays.
2.
2. Sasha Banks and Alexa Bliss. One of the greatest real-life feuds currently going on features two huge stars of the women's division. Alexa admitted that the heat between the two goes back to their NXT days. When it comes to dishing it out, Sasha's been a lot more vocal in voicing her displeasures towards Bliss. Sasha has stated several times that Bliss is simply playing dress up and never gave a damn about the wrestling business, calling her a phony. She even took things a step further, making the claim that Bliss can't even tell the difference between Matt and Jeff Hardy. Recently, Sasha showed the animosity still exists when she refused to answer a question at a Q&A that regarded a relationship and thoughts on Alexa Bliss. With such a great real-life feud, it's a mystery how the company hasn't given the two a lengthy storyline instead of one that lasted a mere couple of weeks.
1.
1. Goldberg and Ryback. Oh, Ryback. Once again he made headlines pertaining to a story in relation to Goldberg's return. According to the big guy, Goldberg was brought back in order to spite him. Oh goodness. Ryback even made the claim that Vince refused to end Ryback's WWE Network subscription so he could watch what went on, and that would result in him missing the company. Goldberg recently spoke out pertaining to comparisons made between himself and Ryback. Bill did not seem flattered by the similarities between the two, claiming Ryback doesn't hold a candle to himself, and someone like Roman in terms of being athletically gifted. Goldberg called Ryback more of a robot type of wrestler due to his bodybuilding background. Goldberg ended the question by stating he doesn't think twice about Ryback due to the fact that he never met him.